At face value, urban agriculture is exactly what it sounds like. Cultivation in an urban environment. But peeling back the curtain and looking deeper reveals that urban agriculture is actually a useful tool for improving health, saving the environment, and building community. Growing urban agriculture is a vital step to improving the future of agriculture and the world's population. Implementation of urban agriculture will solve some of the biggest problems facing the human race. Number 1, being hunger. 870 million people around the world do not have access to a sufficient supply of nutritious and safe food. Urban agriculture will help establish global food security. But urban agriculture can do more than that. It has huge positive effects on the environment, beating traditional agriculture in every category, reducing pollution, saving resources, and creating higher quality products for the community. However, urban agriculture is important for another reason. Communities involved in urban agriculture experience connections that are rare in the 21st century, bringing them together to share their cultures with others. More than 10% of U.S. households experience food insecurity in any given year. The risk of food insecurity is higher among Hispanics, with 20.1% experiencing some type of food insecurity annually. In a case study that took place in Oregon, 40 Hispanic farm worker families were educated in planting and maintaining organic gardens. Before and after growing season, participants completed a survey asking questions like, how often does your household consume vegetables? And how often are you worried about running out of money to buy food? Frequency of adult vegetable intake of several times a day increased from 18.2% to 84.8%. And frequency of children's vegetable intake of several times a day increased from 24% to 64%. Before the gardening season, the sum of frequencies of sometimes and frequently worrying in the past month that food would run out before money was available to buy more was 31.2%. And the sum of these frequencies dropped to 3.1% during the post-garden period. In a quote from one of the families in the open-ended question category, she said, "The kids enjoying watching the plants grow. They try to help them grow by trying to water them. It helped us a lot. We saved money, and we also are showing our kids that the love of the land who feeds us." From this study, researchers concluded that a community gardening program can reduce food insecurity, improve dietary intake, and strengthen family relationships. Food security, as defined by the United Nations Committee on World Food Security, means that all people, at all times, have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. Food insecurity is the opposite of food security. Food insecurity can lead to heart problems, cancer, and other chronic diseases because of the recent surge of cheap fast food options, which have made their way into urban communities, preying especially on poor families and children. These people are forced into a cycle. Because they are poor, they are unable to afford healthy food. So they pay for cheap and unhealthy food, causing them to have health problems that increase their medical bills, causing them to continue to live in poverty. This cycle is passed from parent to child and can devastate poor urban communities. Food insecurity leads to health problems like heart conditions and cancer. Urban agriculture can eliminate food deserts by growing healthy, affordable, and local food for affected communities. One example of urban agriculture that can be used specifically to empower these people in urban food deserts began as a project started by a man named Ron Finley. He uses gardens to empower himself and others to have a better relationship with food.
Just like 26.5 million other Americans, I live in a food desert. South Central Los Angeles, home of the drive-through and the drive-by. Funny thing is, the drive-throughs are killing more people than the drive-by. People are dying from curable diseases in South Central Los Angeles. For instance, the obesity rate in my neighborhood is like 5 times higher than, say, Beverly Hills, which is like probably 8-10 miles away. I got tired of seeing this happening. And I wonder, how would you feel if you had no access to healthy food? If every time you walk out your door, you see the ill effects that the present food system have on your neighborhood? So what I did, I planted a food forest in front of my house. It's on a strip of land that we call a parkway. It's like 150 feet by like 10 feet. The thing is, it's owned by the city, but you have to maintain it. So I'm like, cool. I can do whatever the hell I want. Since it's my responsibility and I got to maintain it, and this is how I decided to maintain it. I have witnessed my garden become a tool for the education, a tool for the transformation of my neighborhood. Gardening is the most therapeutic and defiant act you can do, especially in the inner city. And people ask me, Finn, aren't you afraid people are going to steal your food? And I'm like, hell no, I ain't afraid they're going to steal it. That's why it's on the street. That's the whole idea. I want them to take it, but in the same time, I want them to take back their health. If kids grow kale, kids eat kale. If they grow tomatoes, they eat tomatoes. But when none of this is presented to them, if they're not shown how food affects the mind and the body, they blindly eat whatever the hell you put in front of them.
Most people get their food from a grocery store, but most people also have no idea the extent of the environmental effects of the journey from farm to plate. The farms that grocery stores receive an overwhelming majority of food from are called industrial farms. The current, or most popular food production method from farm to consumer takes 1,500 miles to complete. The types of crops cultivated in industrial farms are not bred for their taste, but for their transportability, high yield, and toughness. The food begins growing at the farm. The farm overuses pesticides and water, polluting the soil and producing substandard food. The average farm in the U.S. uses 1 billion pounds of pesticide per year. The world uses 5 billion pounds per year. The produce is harvested by large amounts of underpaid workers and placed into trucks, which cost money, run on gas, and pollute the air. These trucks travel long distances, bumping and bruising produce. The produce is driven to a factory for packaging and processing. The factory causes air and soil pollution, as well as creating plastic waste that will be put into landfills and oceans. The produce is put back on a truck, which takes it to a warehouse where it is sectioned out for different stores and packaged again. Then it is placed on a truck, yet again, and transported to a grocery store, where customers can purchase the now bruised, tasteless, and textureless produce that has spent the last few days ripening and being handled in trucks. Globally, agriculture consumes 70% of the world's water, 37% of the world's land, and 30% of the world's energy. Global agriculture is also responsible for 20% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. The current use of industrial farming leads to the destruction of soil, pollution of air and water, bad produce, and overuse of resources. Urban agriculture can responsibly farm produce locally, reducing agriculture's environmental footprint. An example of urban agriculture designed specifically to address the environmental issues facing agriculture is rooftop gardens. Rooftop gardens are located on the roofs of office buildings, warehouses, parking garages, and anywhere else with a roof. These gardens create new opportunities for efficient food production methods, cutting down on resources, money, and improving produce quality. Possibly the most important benefit of rooftop gardening is it uses no new land. By building on top of already existing structures, they have nearly unlimited space. There is approximately 16.8 billion square feet of rooftop space in America, and approximately 40,000 square feet of farmland. These new rooftop farms responsibly source water by collecting it themselves. They water their plants with rainwater. This method not only saves money, but also saves water. Rooftop gardens use no synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. Instead, they use insects. By placing plant-friendly insects like ladybugs in the greenhouse with the crops, they attack the plant-eating insects like whiteflies. Rooftop gardens also use solar panels to source energy and grow a variety of foods, bred for their nutrients and taste. Building a rooftop garden is simple. Mohammed Hodge explains the steps he took to build his urban rooftop garden in a TEDx presentation in Montreal. Step 1. Find an existing roof. Step 2. Create a base greenhouse made of aluminum, steel, and glass. Step 3. Install climate control devices. And Step 4. Plant crops. This rooftop garden can feed over 2,000 people while using half the energy and water of an industrial farm. This garden only spends $15 on fuel per day, which is spent distributing its produce directly to customers through universities and coffee shops. Although ideally in the future, rooftop gardening will be more widespread and produce can be available in more places.
Believe it or not, the first is actually a picture of the land that used to exist where we have built our greenhouse 40 years ago. So 40 years ago, prior to the construction of the industrial building, there used to be a farm, and a farmer used to work here feeding people. For 37 years, that spot was replaced by an industrial building that contributed to heat islands and displaced the farmer. The good news is this spot is once again a fertile plot of land, employing many and feeding many, many more, and helping make our world a better place. So imagine cities that feed their own inhabitants. Imagine communities that are connected by farms. Imagine knowing your farmer and knowing your food.
Urban agriculture is an innovative way to get healthy food to the local community in an environmentally friendly way. But it is also a simple solution for bringing together a community, culturally connecting people, and educating youth. In the 21st century, the population as a whole has become more detached than ever to their local communities. Because we aren't communicating with our neighbors, we miss out on important connections that can teach us about different cultures and problems within our communities. The best solution for a broken community is a community garden. A community garden is a space dedicated to giving people a place where they can take charge of their health, education, and be proud of their culture by sharing a gardening space with their community. Community gardens are most effective in areas where residents don't have yards or places to plant things. In community gardens, plots are sold or rented out to residents for a fee. The money goes back into improving the garden. This form of urban agriculture is most effective in the suburbs, apartment buildings, and areas with townhouses, because the inner city doesn't have enough space for a large gardening operation. Community gardens can be used to educate children about where food comes from and what food is healthy, which will improve child obesity and cause those children to pass it on to their friends and the next generations. Community gardens can be located anywhere. Here in Alexandria, Virginia, we have a few community gardens. These gardens are located near schools like Chinkapin or GW Community Gardens. They're located near churches like Episcopal Church and along large roads like Holmes Run. The GW Community Garden was created in 2010 because of a demand for a place for residents to plant food in Delray. In an effort to learn more about the garden and how it has affected the community, I sent an email to them, and I got a response from one of the leaders of the garden named Deborah. About how many people use the GW Community Garden? The garden can support approximately 20 families. In 2019, we have about 15 families involved in GW Community Garden. What is a community garden to you? A community garden is a place where neighbors interested in gardening can gather and enjoy the experience of gardening together. Why was a community garden important to your community? I think GW Community Garden is important because it provides a space for those in the area to garden as a community. Whether members are interested in gardening or don't have other access to community space, it also allows for novice gardeners to learn a little more under a group setting and build relationships with our neighbors who enjoy fresh, locally grown produce. How has your community changed since the creation of the GW Community Garden? I haven't been a member as long as some of the other members, but the area has developed a lot in 10 years since the creation of the garden. With the current interest in having locally grown and organic produce, I think there's been more interest from the community in the community garden, and hopefully more sustaining members. Zoe DeBello creates public school-based community gardens in New Bedford to educate and connect families.
What was it about a community garden that moved these parents to show up? Sure, some of them had cultural gardening knowledge that they were eager to put to use, but others had never gardened before. And truth be told, neither had I. I'm a city girl who's been known to kill her houseplants. But maybe people were there for the same reason I love doing the work I do. It builds community. The garden creates a space where people can engage in meaningful and authentic ways, where a parent can participate not in a formal parent-teacher conference, but in real life. As many of us know, urban public schools often have low family engagement. And we also know that family engagement is critical to students feeling engaged and excited about learning. What do these dominant cultures of New Bedford have in common? A passion and a skill for growing food. The work my program does in New Bedford is not building your typical school garden. Really, our focus is on building community through the act of growing food collectively. By day, the garden is used as an outdoor classroom, and after school hours is open for the community. I have met students who think eggs grow on trees or have never before tasted a raw red pepper, or are learning for the first time that indeed carrots come from the ground. I believe we can create spaces for increasing social capital, cultural capital, access to healthy food, while simultaneously creating engaging outdoor classrooms through the implementation of community school-based gardens.
Urban agriculture can take many forms, but they all result in health, environmental, and cultural benefits for the community. urban agriculture is an effective solution to food deserts, America's health crisis, and the education of youth. Talk to your city about urban agriculture and make a difference in your community and around the world.
And slowly but surely, the garden I dreamed of has become a reality. The hard, disheartening earth that resisted all our efforts has become friendly, workable soil, yielding new miracles with every changing season. Year after year, our garden grows more beautiful. And every year, I observe a very personal anniversary. On this day, I pick an extra lavish bouquet and give it to my neighbor, both in thanks and in memory of a certain bouquet she once gave me, before I was garden-wise.